Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Transformation UK. My name is Ben, and in this video today, I want to talk to you about how you can discover or maybe even rediscover your self worth. And by following the advice in this video, I am hoping to really connect you with that feeling of worthiness in your life so that you can go out there and be the best and most confident version of yourselves. So if you are excited by that proposition, then make sure you do leave a like on the video at some point, because it really does help with the video reach and kind of getting to more people and providing as much helpful content as possible, and it also really helps the channel to grow as well. Also, if you're interested in some free giveaways of some self-improvement books or some free coaching as well, then make sure that you head over to my Facebook page, which is in the description below, to get involved with that as well. And with all that out of the way, let's jump into how you can discover your own self-worth. Okay, so the first thing to know would be, what exactly is self-worth? And self-worth is all about confidence in more or less your worth as a person, what kind of value you bring to the world and to the lives of others, as well as to your own life as well. And if you are watching this video, then I'm guessing you might have a slight problem with that, with the feeling of unworthiness. And it might be sometimes, it might be all of the times, but whatever it is, a sense of unworthiness is hardly ever a helpful thing. And it can come from any number of places. It might be something that we were told as a child, that we don't deserve this, that, and the other. It might be that we feel that we don't deserve love, or we don't deserve this job, or we're not worthy of having this in our lives. Whatever it is, it's very, very unhelpful, and it can also be really harmful to our mental health and our mindset also. For me, finding my own self-worth was a very, very long journey, and it was something that I personally struggled with for quite a long time. But once I was able to connect with my own personal worthiness, everything started to fall into place a lot easier. So I'd like to share with you an example of my own sense of unworthiness back a few years ago when I was living in London, and I just started a new job at a restaurant, at a pizza restaurant. I was just a door host. All I did was stood at the door and greeted people, handed up menus, showed them to their tables, things like that. It was a very simple job. It's my first job in London, and again, this was at the time where everything in my life was kind of falling apart and I didn't really know anyone. And I have told this story on this channel before, but it is just a very good exemplifying point. So this was maybe my first or second day at the job, and I was just standing there. There were no customers, and I looked across the room, and that was when I first saw one of the female waiters that worked there. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was probably one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen in my entire life. And my first thought was exactly that. And my second thought was something along the lines of, you are so far beneath her, or she would never go out with someone the likes of you, because I had all of these negative beliefs at the time, all about my identity and who I was and my background, where I came from. And that was the very, very first time when I became aware that I had this sense of unworthiness in my life. And it was definitely one of those defining moments for me. What I didn't realize at the time was that I had a choice. I could have either chosen to believe that and then reinforce it with my actions, thoughts, and behaviors, or I could have chosen to reject that altogether and go and live my best life. And I'd love to say there's a happy ending to this story where I plucked up the courage and went up and spoke to her, and now we've been in a relationship for 5 or 6 years and it's been amazing. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. I instead unconsciously made the decision that I was going to believe that I was unworthy. I don't think I ever had a conversation with her in the 9 months that I worked there, and every single time I saw her, that feeling of unworthiness came back over and over and over again. But one of the main key things to remember is that at a certain point, I made the decision for myself that I was going to believe that thought about myself. Okay, so before we jump into some of the effective tools for overcoming that sense of unworthiness, I want to jump into some principles of things that you will need to remember in order to change your thoughts and beliefs about your own sense of self-worth. And the first thing is that we are what we do repeatedly. So if we are constantly telling ourselves that we are worthless or that we don't have value to bring to the world or to the lives of others, then over time that is what we are going to believe. It is unfortunately one of the few types of affirmation that does actually work because we believe it to be so. And if we believe something to be true, then our mind is going to make it our reality. And this isn't to do with manifestation, this is just psychology. It is how these things happen over time. So the first thing to remember is that we are what we do repeatedly. The second thing is that you should never let anyone define who you are. You are in control of the way that you define yourself. You get to decide what type of person you want to be. And whilst genetics and the way you're raised and the environment in which you're raised and other factors like that do come into it, at the end of the day, you do have a choice to shape yourself into the kind of person that you want to be. And I'm guessing that you know that, otherwise you wouldn't be watching a video like this. One of the core principles of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, which is something that I'm really getting back into studying at the moment, is that you are responsible for your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions. And usually the pushback on this is that, well, I'm actually not in control of my thoughts. And I would be inclined to agree with that. We're not in control of our thoughts. Our thoughts are just things that happen within our brain all of the time. But what I'm not saying is that we are in control of our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings, because sometimes we aren't. But what we are in control of and what we are responsible for is the way that we respond to them. So a negative thought might pop into our brain, such as I am unworthy, and we get to choose how we respond to that. What most people just don't realize is that they have the choice of whether or not they want to believe a thought. I didn't know that I had the choice of whether or not I could believe that thought about myself all those years ago when I saw the attractive waitress from across the room. I didn't think that I had any choice in the matter. It was just I am unworthy, and straight away I believed it without questioning. So the final principle for me to go over before we jump into the tools to overcome low self-worth is that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are just things that happen in your brain. They are the automatic firing of neurons, and a lot of the time we just aren't in control of our thoughts. Automatic thoughts pop into our head on a very, very regular basis, millions of times per day. So let's remember that there are always two sides of our mind. There is the part of you that has the thoughts, and then there is the part of you that recognizes those thoughts. And we want to remain in that part that recognizes things as thoughts, rather than the part that identifies as the kind of thought giver. So it took me quite a while to really discover my sense of self-worth, but as I've said, this has been one of the things that has been very, very influential in my life. It's what started me in the direction of wanting to learn how to better myself, and eventually to starting Life Transformation UK to help people achieve their freedom through confidence. And self-worth is a big foundation of confidence. So the first tool that you're going to need for discovering your own self-worth is a sense of self-awareness. If you don't have any self-awareness, then you can't be introspective. And if you can't be introspective, then you cannot look within yourself to find out whether or not things are true or if they are false for you. And self-awareness can come with time. There's lots of self-awareness exercises that you can do. In fact, there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of them on Google. But the best way that I found to gain self-awareness was not to immediately rely on myself, because at that point I was kind of like an unreliable narrator in my life. Instead of talking about things in their kind of objectivity, I was only relying on what had been up to that point pretty flawed logic and pretty flawed reasoning. So I went out and I got a counselor instead, a therapist, and she really helped me to develop my self-awareness. And she asked me a lot of very pointed questions on whether or not I was actually viewing reality objectively, or whether or not I was throwing in all kinds of my old negative and limiting beliefs that was altering the way that I was viewing the world. So the best way to develop self-awareness, or at least the quickest way, is to go and find a counselor or a therapist, or even somebody who is not afraid to tell you the truth. A good friend or a parent or a sibling, a spouse, a partner, they might be able to provide these functions for you as well. But I would highly recommend going out and hiring a therapist or a counselor, somebody who is going to be able to ask you the right questions to get you to start thinking about what is actually happening, not what you assume is happening. The next thing is building yourself up a support network. And I've done an entire video on this in the past, so I will link that in the description. But a support network can really help you to discover your own self-worth, because when people are willing to help you and support you, it means that they see value in you as a person. And if other people see value in you as a person, then you must have some value or worth. That's something that your brain can't deny. If other people love you, if other people care about you, then you must have some worth, and you can start to recognize that. Now, if you don't have a support network already, as I said, I do have a video on that, so I would recommend that you go and watch that. But support networks can be developed, and they can be developed pretty quickly from family, from friends, from people that you go to the gym with, people that you are in clubs with, things like that. So the next thing is self-love and self-compassion, and also these are things that I have spoken about quite a lot on this channel. The idea that you need to treat yourself like you are your own best friend, and also to come to grips with the fact that you are not perfect as a person, and that is absolutely okay. Forgiving yourself for your own past mistakes and giving yourself the freedom to just be exactly who you are, rather than somebody that you think you have to be. So when I was starting out, one of the exercises that I did to start to develop more self-love and self-compassion in my life was that I sat down and I wrote out 100 things that I loved about myself, or 100 things that I was grateful about myself for. And it seems like a pretty easy exercise to do for kind of like the first 30 out of 100. Once you get to about 50 items on that list, then you have to start getting really creative. Once you get up to 70, you have to be really, really introspective. You have to start to dig deep. And by the time you've hit 100, you will know yourself a lot better than you did at the beginning of the exercise. Make sure that if you do this, that you set aside a big chunk of time to do it, and that you do it all at once. And then the final thing is to challenge your limiting thoughts and do it regularly. When a thought pops into your mind that says that you are unworthy, or that you don't deserve this or you don't deserve that, challenge it. Find out if it's actually true. What I used to do is I used to run little experiments for myself. I would go out in public, for example, and one of the negative thoughts that I had was that I shouldn't be making eye contact with people because of any number of reasons, really. There were lots and lots of reasons that came down to my sense of unworthiness, that came down to anxiety, that came down to just me being scared of the way that people would react. So what I did was that I forced myself to go out and just do it over and over and over again, just walking in public, making eye contact with people for a few seconds, smiling as well so I don't look like a psychopath. And I just did that over and over and over again. I challenged my limiting thoughts about myself and about the world, and over time I was able to completely change the way that I think, and it was again massively helpful for me in my self-improvement journey. So make sure that you are always challenging your limiting thoughts. Maybe keep a list of the limiting or negative thoughts about yourself, write them all down and keep them, and then kind of challenge them one by one. And you may even find that some of the things are actually true about yourself. So if there is something that you're not good at, or something that you are struggling with, you can work on it and you can become better and better and better until one day that negative and limiting belief no longer matters because you have all that evidence behind you and you have that foundation. So to summarize, the best tools you can use to discover your sense of self-worth again is get self-awareness, hire a therapist or a counselor, or get somebody who is willing to challenge you and who isn't afraid to tell you the truth about yourself. Start investing in self-love and self-compassion. Treat yourself like you would do your best friend, and give the list of 100 things you love about yourself a try. It is very, very worth it to do, and even though it's a hard exercise, it can be a hard exercise, you will come out of it knowing yourself a lot better. And then finally, make sure that you are always challenging your limiting beliefs every single day. And what you'll find is if you keep practicing these things, you are going to discover or rediscover your sense of self-worth. I know because I did this myself as well. One of my favourite scenes from the Avengers Endgame movie was that moment when Thor realises that he is still worthy. He's had this really deep conversation with his mother and he's depressed because everything basically has gone wrong and he believes it's all his fault and that he is no longer worthy. But he speaks to his mum, part of his support network, and comes to realise that he is not perfect and he's just like everyone else. He makes mistakes. He sometimes even makes big mistakes. And you can kind of see the moment where he lifts himself up again and he reaches out his hand and his hammer just flies into his hand, and at that moment he knows once again that he is worthy. Now, I'm not saying that there'll be a moment like that for yourself, but if you keep on practicing these things, engage with your support network, practice self-love and self-compassion and challenging your limiting beliefs, then you will discover your self-worth. It is within you already and you can find it. So I hope you have found this video useful. If you have done, make sure to leave a like and a comment as well, letting me know what it is that you're going to be doing to transform your life today. As I've said, if you're looking for any free coaching sessions, I am going to be starting to run a few over on my Facebook page, so make sure to head over to there if you're interested in that as well. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching this video and I look forward to seeing you in future videos very soon.